Cheers, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this special whiskey and chocolate pairing event brought to you in partnership with Diageo and Tigre y Oliva. On behalf of Manila House, this is Bambina Olivares, the Director of Programming, welcoming you today. It comes as no surprise that chocolate and whiskey go together extremely well. The warming, complex nature of most whiskeys complements and undercuts the luxurious, creamy texture of good chocolate. Tonight, we explore this blend of tastes and textures in a pairing class that puts together 5 special single malt Scotch whiskies and 5 unique single origin artisanal chocolates crafted by Tigre y Oliva. Just some ground rules before we proceed. This webinar is being recorded and will be up on the Manila House YouTube channel in a day or so. We are in meeting mode, so feel free to ask questions as we go along. May we also ask you to turn on your camera so that we can all enjoy the pairings together. I hope you have all have your whiskey and chocolate samplers ready because this is going to be quite an experience. And this is not everyday whiskey, nor is it everyday chocolate. This is premium stuff. The whiskeys are from Diageo's Prestige Business Unit, and here to tell you a little more about this is Matias Cope. Matias?
Thank you so much, Bambina. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being part of this special night. Before we start, I would like to thank Manila House. Thank you so much for making this possible and putting this together. I'm very much looking forward to this. It's special because it's probably 2 of our favorite things. For me personally, at least it is. We're talking about whiskey and chocolate. During this, this situation right now, we're quite limited to certain things, but those are 2 of the pleasures that we can still indulge in, and combining them is quite exciting. So welcome, everyone. Before we start the tasting, I will just briefly introduce Diageo. As some of you may know, Diageo is the biggest liquor company in the world. We own brands such as Johnnie Walker, Tanqueray, Singleton, just to name a few. Tonight we'll be tasting brands that are part of the Diageo Prestige business. So Diageo Prestige business focuses more on the upscale products of Diageo, some of which you will try shortly. So the price range when you talk about products from our Prestige units start as low as 3,000 and currently I think go up to 8 million. So there's quite some variety. But most of these products are quite difficult to come by, as most of them or some of them are not available in retail or in outlets. But now some of these products will be available in Manila House. As you can see with the bottles that you have in front of you, we have a special collection of Mortlach, which are the smaller bottles that you can see, which is one of the latest imports we have. And I'm happy to say that you are one of the first to try these. So these are also quite limited, the access to these. So we're also very happy that Manila House is going to offer these products available to their distinct members. And the bigger bottles that you see, the Lagavulin and the Talisker, I believe, are part of our special releases. So when it comes to special releases, what makes special releases special is that these bottles will not be reproduced. They are limited to a certain amount, and there's allocation throughout Asia and the other parts of the world. But once these bottles are sold, they will not be reproduced, and that's what makes these limited editions. So yes, as Bambina mentioned, these liquids are rather special, and so is the chocolate that you're about to taste. And the access to these special releases are now available exclusively outside of any other restaurant or membership club to Manila House, which is usually available through Diageo itself, but now through Manila House. So we're very thankful and grateful and excited about this collaboration, and want to thank Manila House once again. So without further ado, thank you again, everyone for being here tonight, and I hope you enjoy this evening. And I'd like to give the floor back to Bambina. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Matias. Now I'm going to introduce you to Rian Asiddao, who is Diageo's brand ambassador, and he's going to guide you through the whiskey tasting this evening. Rian brings with him vast experience in the beverage industry with a number of bars under his belt. He also comes with both professional and international training experience He has worked at the famous Atlantis Hotel in Dubai. Rian was part of the team that was specifically chosen to open and handle the famous Salon de Ning of the Manila Peninsula. He was also part of the pioneer team of the Raffles Long Bar in Makati. In addition, Ryan's portfolio also includes a number of flair and bartending competitions. He made it to the world-class finals in regional finals in 2014 and represented the Philippines in other brand competitions such as La Maison Cointreau in 2015. He went to Scotland for the Malts Advocate course in other Diageo markets for brand training, and he's currently handling world-class Philippines. So also joining us is Tigre y Oliva, represented by partner and owner Rob Crisostomo. After having been awarded as a top social enterprise selection by the British Council, Rob Crisostomo founded Seedcore, which aimed to provide farmers with income through sustainable cacao production. Among the projects were reforestation initiatives through tree planting and farmer trainings, which equip farmers with agronomic knowledge and best practices. While the social enterprise linked farms and exported to global chocolate manufacturers, it was a dream to produce Philippine-made, high-quality and premium chocolate, which we will now taste in the form of Tigre y Oliva. So Rian and Rob, so I turned over to you.
Thank you, Bambina. Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to our tasting sessions with our whiskeys and Tigre y Oliva chocolates. My name is Rian Asiddao. I am the brand ambassador for Diageo. And for tonight, we will be tasting amazing whiskeys and will be paired with amazing chocolates. So I'm pretty much excited. I'm sure you guys are also excited to taste our whiskeys and of course our chocolates. And before we start, let me just share my screen. So Rob and I prepared a deck so to give you a guide in our tasting session. So along the tastings, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can actually ask it out. And of course, we will try our best to answer all your questions. But what we want you guys to experience tonight is to enjoy, appreciate the whiskeys, and appreciate the chocolates. And don't forget to drink responsibly. All right, so without further ado, let's go to my segment first. I'll be talking about the whiskeys and I'll turn over the floor to Rob in a bit. So as Matt was telling us earlier, we are Diageo, the biggest spirits company, and people may know us about the mainstream brands, but for tonight, we are actually going to taste our whiskeys from our prestige segment. And I'm sure pretty much most of you, especially whiskey drinkers, know the brands such as Mortlach, Talisker, and Lagavulin. And these whiskeys are really, really amazing and very, very special. So for today, like what I said, we are going to have 5 whiskeys. So earlier, during sort of our briefing earlier, I was telling Manila House and Matt and Rob that when we have tasting, we usually have 3 or 4 whiskeys. But tonight is very special. We are having 5 whiskeys. And of course, Diageo supports responsible drinking, thus please drink it responsibly. Right, so before we go on to the brands, let me just give you a short brief about whiskey. So whiskey is a product, it's a distilled product made from fermented grain mash. So the grains could either be malted barley, wheat, rye, corn, etc. And we have so many whiskeys in the world, namely the biggest 6 countries that are whiskey producers are Scotland, Ireland, United States, Japan, India, and Canada. So those 6 are the biggest producers of whiskey. But for tonight, we are going to focus on one special country, dubbed as one of the most beautiful countries in the world, which is Scotland, and we are going to focus on Scotch whiskey. So filtering down to Scotch whiskey, we have different types. So we have single malts, which is from one particular distillery using malted barley, using pot stills, usually batched. We also have single grain, from one distillery using grain whiskeys, using column stills, usually mass produced. When you combine 2 or more single malts, you have blended malts. Good example would be Copper Dog and Johnny Walker, green label. And when you combine 2 or more single grains, you will then have blended grain whiskeys. Then if you combine single malts and single grains, you will then have blended Scotch whiskey. So these are the 5 types of single Scotch whiskey, but for tonight we are going to focus on one, which is I think very trendy and it's one of my favorite types of whiskey, single malt. So for today we are going to taste three single malt Scotch whiskies, and one of which with three variants. So pretty much, I'm sure you guys are all excited. Jumping on our first whiskey, we are going to talk about Mortlach. So welcome to the whiskey's best kept secret. So before we go on to the distillery, since we're talking about Scotland and we're talking about Scotch and we're talking about single malt, we have different regions in Scotland. They are the whiskey making regions. There are actually five. We have Campbelltown, we have Isla, we have Lowlands, we have Highlands, and we have Speyside. Different regions have different characteristics, different styles of Scotch whiskey. But at the end of the day, whiskey is all about flavor. Jumping on to those five, we are focusing our first whiskey with the most famous region, which is Speyside, and dubbed as the capital region of Scotch making in Scotland. So Mortlach was founded in 1823, and it was the first legal distillery in Dufton in Speyside. So Dufton, Speyside is actually the capital of Speyside, wherein there are so many distilleries in that specific area. There was a saying before that Rome was built on seven hills, Dufton was built on seven stills, meaning there were seven distilleries during that period of time. But the first legal distillery was Mortlach. It was founded in 1823. History passed on, it was passed on to different owners, not until 1896, wherein the Cowies took over the distillery. It was George Cowie and his son, Dr. Alexander Cowie. So they were the game changers in distillery because they introduced a specific style of producing this beautiful whiskey, which is the 2.81, which is I'm going to discuss as we go along. So Dr. Alexander Cowie was a doctor practicing medicine in Hong Kong. When his father asked him to help him out, he then went back to Scotland and then used his skills as a medical person, practitioner, his skills in medicine into the distilling. Thus, he created a very unique and concise whiskey production process called as the Way, which is the 2.81 distillery. So short about the distillery, it has 6 stills. All of them have different shape and sizes, but the smallest one, which is spirit still number 1, is called the Wee Witchy. It's the smallest, but it is actually the biggest factor in the distillation process. It is where the 2.81 distillation process happens. So it's like having 3 distilleries in one because of the mix and match of shapes, sizes, and of course the very concise production process. So like what I said, Dr. Alexander Cowie introduced the Way, the 2.81 distillation process. It's very complicated and it's very unique and concise, but just to make it simple, it's a re-round and a combination of the different cuts in the production process, wherein they just combine the different cuts of the distillate and then redistilling it. And then in all, it all boils down to 2.81 distillation process, making this whiskey bold, flavorful, and of course robust. Having said that, because of these flavors, when we talk about whiskey, people think the smokier or the peatier whiskeys are sort of the bigger ones or the best ones. But in Mortlach, what we wanted to feature is, of course, having bold flavors, having muscular, powerful flavors without the smoke. So later on, as we taste our whiskeys and paired with our chocolates, you will really feel the full of flavors and, of course, the beauty of this whiskey, especially when it's paired with Tigre y Oliva with chocolates. Thus, because of these, it was dubbed as the Beast of Dufton by renowned author Mr. Dave Broom. I think now we are ready to taste our first whiskey, the first three variants. So, it will be Mortlach 12, 16, and 20. So guys, if you have your whiskey, you can have this in order. Jumping on to the other two whiskeys before I pass on the mic to Rob. we are going to taste two of our beautiful special release from the 2019 range whiskey. We have Talisker 15 and Lag of Woolen 12. When we talk about special releases, like what Matt was telling us earlier, it's an annual release from Diageo Distillery. So not every year we are producing the same distilleries. We are actually producing different distilleries, different aging process, different cask strength, but everything is actually cask strength, meaning more of the top-notch higher ABV without the dilution. So expect intensity as we taste our whiskey together with our chocolates. So for tonight, we are going to taste Rare by Nature, our special release by 2019, and specifically the second and the third whiskeys on the screen, Lagavulin 12 and Talisker 15. This will be our two other whiskeys aside from the three more clap range that we have. So that's it for our whiskeys. Later on, I'm going to expand more about the distillery and, of course, Lagavulin and Talisker as we taste our whiskeys. But for now, let me pass on the mic to Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hi, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so I'm from Tigre y Oliva Chocolate. Thanks for the introduction a while ago, Bambina. So I, as mentioned a while ago and shared by Bambina, I started off mostly on the cacao side. When I say cacao, it's mostly on the agronomic side. So our initial passion was really working out a social model and working with farmers, in being able to connect farmers to people, giving them better livelihood from a more environmental perspective. So I was doing that for quite some time, working on reforestation initiatives and trying to create an income generating source for farmers. So as the years passed along, we were able to connect with a company called Barry Callebaut, which is the largest chocolate manufacturer globally. So if you eat maybe any chocolate that you would find in a grocery or in a hotel, most likely that 30% of that, or just over one-fourth of your chances of eating the chocolate would have come from this giant group that's been able to produce most of the chocolate globally for Mars, Mondelez, all the big brands. So we were able to connect more farmers into these and give them sort of like a link to the global market. But then as I moved along in my experience in the cacao business, I eventually started to get more interested in the chocolate side. And we started working now with also smaller artisanal and craft producers. And it's very interesting how the world of chocolate similarly has a lot of similarities with the world of whiskey, where you have the very large companies, which you have like in the form of Johnny Walker and all of these. But then as people started to consume more of these globally, more and more people wanted to find, special experiences. So similar to the world of Scotch and whiskeys and alcohol, people in the chocolate industry started wanting to differentiate, and so you had this advent of single origin chocolate, micro origins, and so similarly, people wanted something different. They wanted something that was unique, that you couldn't find anywhere in the world. And so, like coffee, you would have, when you go to a coffee shop now, before you just ask for an Arabica or an espresso or something, whereas now people try to differentiate different coffees and different chocolates from the country from where they originated from. And likewise, people have also gone to, differentiate not only within a country, but also the types of varieties that make and come into a chocolate bar. And so similar to your single malts, you have single varietals, and all of these different aspects of variety, terroir, or the environment where it's grown, all affect the end product or the chocolate and how it actually tastes. And so I got more interested in it, and we started touching base with the chocolatiers around the world, smaller craft chocolate makers. And I came across one Italian chocolatier, Simone Mastrota, who had moved to the Philippines sometime back in 2016 or 17, or around that time. And he was the first person that actually introduced me into the mindset of having different origins within our own country. And so he said, Roberto, I would be really interested in getting chocolate or cacao from you, but I would want to try your cacao from different places around the Philippines, because similar to wine, like in Italy, every region has a unique profile depending on the variety. I don't want to mix any kind of additive or any type of flavor in my cacao. I just want pure cacao, and I mix a little bit of sugar for the sweetener, but I just want to highlight each place, each origin, and I want to see what type of flavor or what type of characteristics can come out. And so with that conversation with Simone, it really opened up a new door for us, or a new experience. And so as time moved along, we eventually partnered up, and we put up this. This is the company that he set up, Tigre y Oliva. It's actually named after his two daughters, Tiger, Lily, and Olive. So Simone actually was a surfer based in La Union. So he was in surf town La Union. He started this brand. Eventually, we worked together. I helped source the cacao for him. We looked around places in the Philippines, small communities that we could work with that would be able to give different kinds and unique flavor profiles that he would masterfully put together and try to create, roast it in a different, unique way, and grind it in a different, unique way to highlight, each community's taste profile. So that was one of our passions, is working with communities and the sustainability in our processes, making sure that farmers get paid, fair wages, are given, fair and equitable opportunities, and that the environments that they work in, have some sort of respect for the way cacao is grown, non-use or not overuse of fertilizers that would have long-term damages on the soil. So that's one of our main passions. And the other spectrum of our passion is really craftsmanship. It's really respecting the process in making a good product, from the time that you harvest the crops, the type of crops that you're harvesting, the way you process it, the way you ferment the beans, the way you dry it, all the way to the chocolate manufacturing process. So you can't have good chocolate if you start off with the wrong foot. And the right foot is making sure that your harvests are done properly. So can you move on to the next slide, Ryan? Ryan? Yeah. So we basically cacao. The flavor of chocolate is affected by many things. So it starts off with cacao. Cacao being at the agricultural side of the process. So what affects the flavor of cacao? First of all, it would be the variety of cacao that you plant. So there are several varieties that are found globally, and sometimes you bring some countries bring in varieties, develop varieties similar to wine, similar to different agricultural produce, and it's an evolutionary process where people develop, they develop varieties based on taste, and also, of course, it's economic value. Second factor that would affect the taste of your chocolate from the cacao side would be your terroir, or as you would say, the environment that it grows in. So that would be the soil that where it grows, the kinds of trees, the surrounding nature. So if it's growing beside banana trees, coconut trees, durian. So all of these also have some significant effect on, although very subtle, there is some sort of effect, especially when you're tasting these chocolates in their very pure form. Third, on the cacao side, fermentation was another factor that really affects chocolate. And proper fermentation is key, actually, in getting a very good chocolate flavor. Something in the fermentation process of the beans allows what they call chocolate precursors, or something inside the bean that's released that gives it that very familiar chocolate flavor. Unfermented chocolate beans, or beans that don't undergo this natural or intentional fermentation process, tend to be a little bit astringent and bitter, and lack that sort of like chocolate flavor that everyone really loves. And then lastly, you would have these your proper processing, like the way you would dry the beans in the proper conditions, storage of the beans. So these are all very important aspects, most especially in these types of dark chocolate bars and non-commercial chocolate bars where you have the purity of the product. When I say purity of the product, is very limited amounts of ingredients. And if you would notice, if you check out your chocolate bars, there's only 3 ingredients here: cacao butter, which is still part of the cacao, and sugar, just to sweeten it. So you can imagine the importance of the raw material and the quality of the raw material in your end product. So everything relies, a lot of the process and the taste relies on how good your quality of raw materials in, because you're not mixing vanilla, you're not mixing orange, you're not mixing all these very strong scents that could mask the real true profile of your chocolate. So that's on the cacao side. And then of course, every cacao or good cacao raw material needs to be partnered with a very passionate craftsman. And so in this case, it's a chocolatier. So Simone had taught us his techniques where he's learned it in the US craft chocolate industry, back in Italy as well. And he had shared a lot of his techniques, special processes, equipment that would be used. And one of the interesting things about chocolate is that chocolate was really a Western, or as people would call it, a Northern sort of like development or Northern technology. And why was that? A little bit of history and trivia here is cacao is actually only grown in the equatorial countries, meaning tropical equatorial countries like Africa, Southeast Asia, the Philippines, and some parts of, let's say, the Americas, like Papua New Guinea, Latin America, South America. So it only grows in that equatorial belt. But funnily enough, most of the chocolate that we know globally is actually all produced in Western countries. Or when I say Western countries, Europe, US, mostly Northern. And why is that? Essentially, cacao was discovered very early on, maybe 400 years ago, 500 years ago. They say it was originated as a cultural experience by the Mayans and the people in the Americas, but they were using it as a drinking cacao. And you could imagine it was drunk in this form because similar to beverage as an elixir, or actually similar to alcohol, and that's why there's very interesting sort of like links between alcohol and chocolate, is because that was its original form of consumption. And because why? Chocolate is from a tropical country. It was originally consumed from a fermented beverage that gives you the same buzz that you would get from alcohol. And eventually, people from these colonial countries they came across this sort of agricultural produce, and they were very enamored, and they wanted to bring it back home to their countries. But when they brought it back to Spain, to Italy, to Europe, they found out that the cacao would harden and would become very, very, in colder climates, it would just become like a very solid mass, right? Totally different to their experience when they were traveling around in these tropical islands. And so you would have, over the few 100 years, the development of the chocolate industry, where they tried to use that same cacao bean and tried to find a use for it in a more solid form. So if you look at the tangent of development and history of cacao, you have the colder climates that eventually developed your chocolate bars. And if you go back to where it was originally produced, like Mexico, Papua New Guinea, even the Philippines, a lot of cacao is actually consumed in drinking form. So you would have your tableas. In Samoa, you'll have cacao Samoa, which is almost like a drinking cacao as well. And so put together, the world now knows chocolate. And so later on, as we drink our whiskey, I like to go more in detail on the different flavor notes that you would get just with a few simple ingredients. Next slide, please. So in the Tiger Craft factory, I'll just be very brief. We just our passion is craftsmanship, few key ingredients, and we use mostly Italian equipment. Of course, our founder, mentor, and the guy that had taught us that this technology and this beautiful process of chocolate making was from Italy. And so in the Tiger Craft Chocolate Factory, we mostly use Italian chocolate making processes, combined, of course, with innovations that we've come across using Asian ingredients mostly from the Philippines. But of course, every now and then we like to play around with what we can find. And so all of this is handcrafted. The chocolate bars that you have in front of you, they're hand packed. Although they use sophisticated and very very precise equipment to make sure that the cacao is ground very smooth. There's the right percentage of cocoa butter that you have there, and it's molded, tempered very well, so that it has that very nice snap. It holds well, it melts well in your mouth. But there is that we still hand wrap everything and put a lot of love in our products. Okay, next slide, please. So starting off from a chocolate bar, we essentially expanded this year our line. So we now not are only what you call a bean to bar chocolate company. Bean to bar meaning we process everything from the beans. A lot of chocolate companies globally normally work with ready-made chocolate, which comes from the big factories like Barry Callebaut, the company I mentioned a while ago. And a lot of them still have a very unique process and a very unique formulation. So they get bulk chocolate and they melt it down and they do their formula. They mix the ingredients. They have their very unique creation. In our case, in the Tiger Craft Chocolate Factory, we work with what we call the bean to bar. So everything is made from scratch. So because we enjoy working with farmers, we enjoy going down, getting getting our hands wet, and really going down to the agricultural side. We really enjoy the process of working with the raw material ingredients. And so from a bean to bar company, we've sort of expanded our line of products, and we now have some other sweets in our bakery. We have an artisanal line of confectionery products, such as our Pili butter bar, as you can see in the slide here. It's one of our top sellers now. We've got like a Tui, which is sort of like a fake version of a Twix, but a more artisanal version of a Twix. And so there's so many things that you can do with chocolate, and it's a very exciting field, and much more exciting than the chocolate itself is what you can eat the chocolate with, what you can drink the chocolate with. And so tonight would be a very exciting time for all of us to get to see that experience of chocolate and whiskey. So with that, I'll just move on already to the whiskey tasting. So it's better to taste things than to describe them.
All right, thank you, Rob. That was very informative. Honestly, I learned a lot. It's my first time really to sort of have a deep dive about chocolates. For the record, now I get it, because the first time I tasted this was in La Union. Now I get it. Good to know. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you guys are excited to taste our whiskeys and pair it with our chocolates. So you have your kits with you, you have your chocolates, you have your whiskey. So we will be tasting our whiskeys one by one, and then we will talk about the chocolates as well. So our order will be Mortlach 12, 16, 20, and then Lag of Woolen, and then Talisker. So that would be our order. So if you could rearrange your whiskeys and your chocolates, that would be great. And I'm also encouraging you guys to have a water on the side so you can cleanse your palate as well. And if you have a small dropper, or if you have a small small shot glass that you can actually use to add a splash of water into whiskey, that would be great. So when we do tasting,
are you saying we can taste straight from the bottle, or do we have to kind of decant to a glass?
Sorry, we have
Just
to have
asking.
a vessel. Thank you, Bambina, for that
Okay,
one. So
okay.
you can use a vessel. You can have, you have Glencairn.
That's very tempting. That's very tempting, though.
Sorry for that one. If you have Glencairns or maybe a tasting glass, that would be great. But if not, feel free to use rocks glass or any vessel that you can actually pour your whiskey. At the end of the day, what you wanted to do is to appreciate the flavors and aromas of whiskey. So thank you for that, Bambina.
And we have a question from Noel here. Can we drink it neat or with a splash of water? Or I guess to try first, we'll try it neat, right?
So as we go along with the tasting sessions, I will be guiding you through the tastings. We will be
Okay.
tasting this neat first.
Okay.
But I can actually recommend you if you want to add a little bit of water, or if you want to add one piece of ice. But for the sake of us appreciating the whole flavor of the whiskey, we'll then have it neat as of the moment, and then after which we can add your dilution, ice or water. All right, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to put it in the chat box. So, any questions to Rob or any questions to me, that would be great. So, without further ado, I think we could go with our first whiskey. So, when we do tastings, we use our senses, our eyes, our nose, our palate. So, everything is subjective. Maybe I like this one will be better for myself, or some for you it will be sort of not too sweet. Or at the end of the day, the taste is subjective. It's very personal. There will be no right or wrong way to describe the whiskey. It will come from our memories. And like what I said, we're going to use our senses. And when we do the pairing, it could either be complementing or contrasting the whiskey and the chocolate. But for this lineup, definitely it's a great complement. And then we have 5 whiskeys and we have 5 chocolates. Maybe later on, after we have done the 5 whiskeys, you can actually pair it with one chocolate to other. So you can actually compare all the whiskeys and all the chocolates that we have. But do remember to drink responsibly. All right. So we go on to our first whiskey, which is Mortlach 12, the Wee Witchy. Earlier, I was talking about the stills in Mortlach, and the smallest stills is Wee Witchy, wherein it is the reason why it's very flavorful, it's very robust. It's because of the 2.81 distillation process. So thus, it is an odd to the smallest still, which is Wee Witchy. That's why it's named after that still. All right, so you have a tasting guide in front of you. So you can just use it as a guide, but definitely feel free to, of course, appreciate the whiskey, share your thoughts, share your flavors that you get, the aromas, and later on we are going to pair it with the chocolates and the cakes from Tigre y Oliva and Manila House. So first whiskey is Mortlach 12, aged in European and American oak barrels combined for a minimum of 12 years old from Dufton, of course, the Mortlach distillery. On the nose, what I usually get in Mortlach is sweetness, rough, right around sweetness. So it's very sweet on the nose with a little bit of fruitiness and a little bit of wood. So feel free to put your thoughts or your feedback or your aromas that you're getting in the chat box. So for me, it's a little bit of the sweeter side, less of the spice, but more of the fruits. Very aromatic, very fragrant whiskey. So on the palate, we can actually taste. So when we taste, what we wanted to do is we want the whiskey to interact with our senses, especially our palate. I always say the second sip will always be the best because the first sip tends to cleanse your palate. So as you can see, it's quite not so much of the intensity. It's only 43.4%, but fruits. It's heavily on fruits. The combination of European and Americano is coming through earth notes, fruit notes. So there will be sweetness again, and a little bit of dark chocolates at the back of your tongue, and light fruitiness as we go along, as we down your whiskey. So for the finish, it's actually light and dry, a little bit of the bitter side. So the way I describe the whiskey is basically it's sweet at first, and then it becomes fruity, then it becomes dry as you finish it. So for our pairing, when we do pairings, what we are suggesting is take a bite of the chocolate or the cake, and then appreciate it, and then try to to sip a whiskey and combine all the flavors. Or sometimes people tend to drink whiskey first and then have a bite of the chocolate and then drink the whiskey again. So what we wanted to do here is to complement all the flavors. And for Mortlach 12, we're actually going to pair it with the Manila House Chocolate Surprise, which is the Manila House Samba Cake, with the Tigre y Oliva chocolate. So what I'm going to do is just take a small bite of the cake and then have it with the whiskey. While doing that, Rob, would you like to share about the chocolates that's in the cake?
Just before we start, just cheers, everyone, huh? And yes,
Okay.
we made this in our kitchen today for all of you using Tigre y Oliva chocolate, which Rob will tell you about.
Thank you, Bambina. Yeah, so the chocolate that was used there is from the Davao region. And so yeah, Davao is actually becoming more and more popular as they would call it the capital of chocolate in the Philippines. And so yeah, these chocolates that we use are select from what we call the micro origins, right? So they're very smaller. They're not the entire country. So a lot of the chocolate that we have here in front of you are similarly limited in terms of quantity. So there would be only a certain amount of output or production that you would have every year. And so yeah, we like as mentioned, are the chocolates that were used, there aren't much additives except for maybe cacao butter, which is still part of the cacao fruit, sugar. So you could use different types of sugar. In this case, we use raw cane sugar. And if ever we do add, like we have a dark milk version, which you guys will try later. So yeah, we used, I think one of these origins that we used for this was the Santa Maria. It's a 75%, which we'll get to later. Yeah.
Nice. So it's really great. So the fruity flavors and a little bit sweetness from Mortlach 12 really goes well with the cake. So the texture of cake is also a game changer.
This is the dark.
So very, very good combination. This is just our first whiskey, and as we go along, we can actually compare the chocolates and the whiskeys. We have a question. Yes,
Four
Babina.
whiskeys to go. 4 whiskeys and 4 chocolates to go.
Yeah. So don't forget to drink water as well. So I think we have a question on the chat box about temperature. So when we are doing tastings, what we wanted to do is to experience and appreciate the whiskey. We're having it neat. Of course, different markets or different countries have different temperatures. But initially, what we wanted to have is, of course, slightly colder than our room temperature in the Philippines. So be in the 20 degrees. But definitely, I think a room temperature in Philippines is an ample amount already to have you appreciate the whiskey. All right, so cool. So it's just our first whiskey and our first chocolate actually. So we can now go then to our second whiskey. So earlier, the first whiskey was Mortlach 12. It was aged in American and European oak, so there was an expectation of earthy notes and fruity notes coming through the barrels. But definitely the second whiskey, the Mortlach 16 Distiller's Ram, is quite different from the first one. So it is called the Distiller's Ram because it's in dedication to the distillers, especially George Cowie and Dr. Alexander Cowie, who were really the game changer in the distillery and introduced the 2.81 distillation process. So another thing about Mortlach 16, so it's in just sherry casks. So expect tannins, expect fruits in this whiskey. It was for sherry cask for minimum of 16 years in the cask. So another layer of flavor, another difference in characteristics. So let's go to our whiskey. So on the nose, as compared to the first whiskey, it's not that sweet, but what I can smell is more of the spice. There will be orchard fruits, spice, and earth notes. So think of maybe cinnamon, a little bit of pepperish notes is coming through. Not sweet, but definitely dry and spicy. So let me just drink a glass of water first before we taste. So onto the palate, before we pair it with our whiskey, let's have a taste first. So still a 43.4% ABV. So the intensity is not that high, but definitely you can feel the burst of flavors. Finish in sherry cask, you will really taste a little bit of tannins, definitely lots of fruits, tad bit sweetness. and definitely a very great aroma in the whiskey. So full of flavor, burst full of flavor. That's a Mortlach 16. And for the finish, as compared to the first whiskey, this one is actually sweeter on the finish side, longer and complex. So very interesting flavors, maybe because it's from the influence of the sherry cask. So the first whiskey was aged in European and American oak. Mortlach 16 was just aged in sherry cask. So hence having different flavors. And again, for 3.4%, and we are going to highlight it and pair it with the coconut milk. The reason why we are pairing coconut milk because, as you can see on the flavor notes of the coconut milk, which Rob will then explain as we go along, definitely there's a little bit sweetness, a little bit of spiciness and tropical flavors from the coconut, definitely, and it goes well with the spiciness of Mortlach 16. So, Rob, we would like to tell something about the chocolate.
Yeah, so the chocolate that you'll have in front of you is a coconut milk chocolate. So it's actually something that's very, very good for people that, especially those guys that are dairy or lactose intolerant. But it's also a unique tropical sort of like profile. We use the Santa Maria micro origin for this coconut milk bar, which hence you have that, hints of spiciness, a little bit of, like pepper finish, but it's also a very sweetish chocolate. You'd have some notes of honey in there. And so the coconut also gives it a very, interesting flavor. So, it sort of cuts out the spice. You know how you have, especially in Asian dishes, your coconut milk to sort of like in Bicol, you'd have where hot peppers are very common, or in Thailand where you have hot peppers, they're mostly cooked with coconut milk. And what coconut milk does is it does soften the spiciness, right? So you get a kick, but at the same time it rounds out the flavor. So putting it all together in this chocolate bar, which is our coconut milk bar with Santa Maria origin, will give you all of those sort of flavors put together. And I think it goes very well with this 16-year-old Mortlach, because I noticed that the Mortlach, having tasted it now, has it has a very long experience, very long and round. It doesn't have a very sharp up and down in terms of, it doesn't have that sort of, doesn't pull you out there. If it were a ride, it almost felt like it was a long steady stroll. That was my experience of this drink. And I think that the roundness of this coconut milk will sort of prolong that a little bit more, and it will, the spicy finish of the chocolate would go well with this whiskey. But honestly, everyone has a unique experience, right? So what I would recommend is you try the chocolate. The proper way to do it, or at least what we would advise, is to bite the chocolate, let it sit in your tongue for a while. Break up the pieces and let it sit in your tongue for a while. Let it melt. Don't chew it all up and swallow it. Allow the chocolate to melt slightly in your mouth, because it's tempered, so it takes a longer time to melt. But once it's melted there, you'll feel the texture of the chocolate. You'll taste the different notes in different parts of your tongue. And so you do that first, and then you have your whiskey. And then you try, as Ryan mentioned, again, a different experience where you drink the whiskey first, so you have that lasting flavors of the whiskey in your palate, in your mouth. Then you try the chocolate. Then it would be a different experience, or you would experience different flavors that would be highlighted depending on which you have first.
So true, Rob. Actually, I had a chocolate first and then tried the whiskey, and it's just a combination and harmony of flavors. It was really good. I think the whiskeys and the chocolates are really sort of bound together in a pairing. So it was really nice. It was really nice.
Would it be possible to get, is there anyone want to give feedback, or at least somebody from, one of our participants? I would be very interested to see their own personal experience on this pairing. Maybe we can ask somebody from the...
Yeah.
Just unmute yourselves. If you'd like to say something, feel free to unmute yourselves and speak.
Share the flavors that you get from both whiskeys and chocolates, or combined. If you're a bit shy, you can actually put it in chat box. We can actually write it. We can actually read it out.
It was
I think we're loving the flavors.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Ria.
the chocolate's so good. I like this olive this coconut with a little. I never growing up coconut wasn't so not really chocolate that I like, but this one is so smooth. It's so yummy.
Super.
This green one. So we're
Thank
trying. I
you.
really like it. Really good.
Thank-
And it's local, so it's even more interesting that it has this kind of richness that's, it's world class. So it's yummy. Congrats.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Not sure
appreciate
this
it.
could be the staple diet, but I'm having a good time tonight.
I agree with that, sir.
And
What about-
Vivek here is saying that he prefers the 16 years over the 12, but we still have 3 more to taste, Vivek. So you might change your mind still.
True.
Yeah, actually, I've never had the malt log before. I mean, I'm a single malt guy, and this is the first time I'm having it. And I think Ryan was bang on. The peppery flavor is I mean, I've never had a peppery flavor in a single malt before. There's something about the wood or the temperature at which it ferments or matures that is very special. And I've decided with my wife that next time we visit Scotland, we're going to go to Mortlach Distillery.
Cool. Actually, when we talk about peppery notes, Sir Vivek, we still have one whiskey later on with so much pepper. So looking forward to that.
I see. Okay, looking forward to that.
All right. 3 more, 2 down, 3 more to go. So I hope you guys are enjoying our whiskeys and chocolate. I think it's time for us to move to our third whiskey. So like we were talking about earlier, it's not every day we taste whiskeys and chocolate, but for the night, we're tasting 5, and one of which is a 20-year-old single malt from Dufftown, from Mortlach, which is Mortlach 20, the Cowie's Blue Seal. So the story behind why is it named Cowie's Blue Seal? In the history, the granddaughters of the Cowie family of Dr. Alexander Cowie, she saw a sort of a treasure box wherein when they opened the treasure box, they saw a number of whiskeys inside with a blue seal. So, and there's a notebook. Then written in the notebook was the favorite whiskeys of the distillers, which is Dr. Alexander Cowie. Hence, they dedicate this 20-year-old Mortlach to the favorite whiskeys of the Cowie. So hence it was named Cowie's Blue Seal. So this is just our third whiskey. This is actually the oldest whiskey in our range for today. Still 43.4%. Still finished, aged in European cask, but at this time we are using also refilled and recharred cask. So another layer to the whiskey. So as compared to the first and second whiskey, this one is also on the drier side on the nose, but definitely majority of the aroma comes from wood. So it's kind of woody, leathery. If you like cigars, you can actually get an aroma of some cigars in this whiskey. Very aromatic. But another thing about this whiskey is the texture when you taste it. So you can actually have your chocolates first and have the whiskeys, or vice versa. For now, the second one I had the chocolate first. For this one, I'm going to have the whiskey and then the chocolate. So let's have the taste of the Mortlach 20. So texture-wise, it's kind of oily and buttery and thick that it will coat your tongue. So the first thing that you're going to notice is when it touches your tongue, it literally coats your tongue. And then complexity of flavors. So much woody notes are there. Berry notes is coming through, especially coming from the European. So it's very robust in flavors, very round and woody. In the finish, it's quite very complex as well. So combination of sweetness and dry notes are coming through when you down it. Very, very great whiskey, powerful and robust whiskey. So for this one, we are going to pair it with the talandang, which is Rob is going to explain as we go along. So the reason why we are pairing this with the whiskey, the woody notes of the whiskey will definitely go well with the Tigre y Oliva talandang chocolate. So Rob, pour off the chocolate.
Yeah. So talandang is actually one of our our lightest dark chocolate micro origin offering. So it's a 70%. And so when you say 70%, that would be the composition or the percentage of cacao present in your chocolate bar. So that's a combination of cacao butter and cacao. And so of course, the higher the percentage, the more intense the flavor is. So this is our lightest one. And so it's got it's planted alongside various fruit trees, durian, coconuts, pomelos and stuff. And so it's from a lower land area. But it's very interesting notes because we found that it had notes of raisins, honey. So it's more of a sweeter, sort of like a fruitier, more rounded flavors. Whereas our other origins sometimes could have more citrus in them, more pepper, more spice in them. This one would be sort of like the sweeter one. And I think that would be paired very well with this 20-year-old, which has, as you mentioned, Rian, wood and leathery notes. So that raisin would kind of, I would imagine, would come out in the end. So let's try that.
Actually, Rob, I can really taste the raisin or the chocolate, which the Morta 20 has hints of raisins as well. So in the group, if you want to share your thoughts, feel free in the chat box, or you can actually unmute yourself. You can actually share your thoughts about the pairing.
I don't know if you guys feel it with this particular, maybe when you try the other origins, but this particular origin, especially with its raisin notes, as you melt it in your tongue, it almost feels like it's very cold in your tongue. And it's not the temperature, because these are all stored in the same thing. But somehow when I eat this chocolate variant compared to the other micro origins, there seems to be sort of like a natural cooling in the mouth. So I don't know if you guys experience that, but that's something that I get with this raisin notes. So it's very rounded, not sharp.
Totally agree, Rob. Round, not sharp.
Do you taste cinnamon also? There's some cinnamon notes. Len was saying.
I think it comes from the combination of the chocolate and whiskey. So there will be different spices that will come through. Cinnamon will always be present because it's part of the earth notes that we are really familiar with. So cinnamon is very aromatic, very flavorful as well. So a good combination with this type of chocolate and this type of whiskey. Definitely there will be cinnamon notes coming through.
One of the very interesting things with these batch harvests, Rian, is that sometimes they're also surprising. You could process the beans in a specific way. You could, in a very consistent way, you could do everything the same. And sometimes the next year's harvest would have some interesting variances. And of course, that's affected batch by batch, year by year, similar to wine. And so that's why this chocolate experience of mine and journey has been very interesting, because every year, of course, you try to manage the quality and stuff, but there are a lot of surprises that come with every harvest, depending on the rainfall and all of that stuff.
Totally agree. So definitely same as whiskey. So that's why we have the distillers, in order for them to make the whiskey as consistent as possible, because not every day you have the same barley, not every day you have the same water. So definitely they have to manage to make it very consistent. But our whiskeys and our chocolate right now is really fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying our pairing. Actually, when we are trying the whiskeys, if you want to pair it with the previous chocolate, you can do so. You can actually compare. So it's a good opportunity for us because we have 5 whiskeys, we have 5 chocolates as well. All right.
I wish I had this every day, Rian.
We can do it.
It's one of
again.
it's
For
one
sure.
it's one of the things that you could do, like, with this crazy lockdown that's happening all over. Of course, the of course, going out and having whiskey is a different experience, and having, drinking with friends in a bar. But at least it's still something that you could do at the confines of your home and still enjoy and still have a pleasurable experience. You could still have it. Of course, it's different going out, but pleasures, whiskey.
I agree with that. So thanks to the technology, we're doing it virtually, but eventually soon we'll be doing this physically, and looking forward to that. And with that, we are going to do our next two whiskeys. So we are done with the Mortlach range. We have done 12, 16, and 20. We are now going to our 2019 Rare by Nature special release. So this one in particular, these two whiskeys are cask strength, meaning there were no dilution happened. So it's quite intense. So you can actually add a little bit of water into your whiskey just to dilute it to a lower ABV, because trust me, this is very intense, which definitely will balance out with the chocolates that we have. So we are going to.
Why is the color lighter? It seems lighter than the others.
So
Why is that?
thank you, Bambini, for the question. So Bambina, sorry. So for the color, the color of the whiskey, majority of the color comes from the aging process. So it could either be from European oak or American oak. And some distilleries also use caramel coloring, E150, in order for them to make the color consistent. So it depends. So European oak tends to give darker colors because it came from wine making, sherry cask. American oak came from bourbon production, wherein it was just filled with distillate, new versions of bourbon whiskey, so it's quite light. This particular whiskey, what we're having is just from American oak, hogshead. So it's just 12 years old in small barrels from United States. Hence, the color is not that evident. So, but definitely, it's a burst of flavor. I'm telling you, once you smell it, once you tasted it, the color is light because it's just 12-year old and it's American oak. So definitely no caramel coloring was added in this whiskey. Hence, it's very natural in the process. So special release 2019 Lagavulin. I don't know if you've noticed in the bottle, you see lots of animals and plants. So basically, we're highlighting the animals that are near the distillery. Hence, in this particular uh, whiskey, we're highlighting this certain bird. I forgot the name, but definitely it's nearby Lagavulin. Lagavulin is from Isla, so expect peatiness. It's one of the most peaty whiskeys that we have in Diageo. It's very recognizable for the whiskey lovers. I'm sure Vivek can attest to that. Yes, they said the classic Lagavulin, but this one in particular is 56.5%. So on the nose, up front, you will see the distillery characteristics of Lagavulin. Peaty, a little bit of medicinal, definitely smoky. Think of leathery as well. So, and a little bit of salty and spice. So very complex, powerful flavor in the nose. And then what you smell most of the time is what you taste. But in this one in particular, let's have a look and let's have a taste.
You can the medicinal quality, you can taste it right away, you can smell it right away.
It's actually from the influence of peat. So peat is from the process of kilning during the malting process of the barley. So Lagavulin is one of the heavily peated single malts. So at the nose, it's very strong in the peat and strong in smokiness. But once you tasted it, there's definitely intensity in alcohol because it's 56.5%. But it's sweet actually. So sweet and a little bit of fruits, but it's actually more of the smokiness. So you can actually try to exhale it through your mouth. Yes?
No, I get it. It's very interesting the way you say it. But I like how it's all of that combined into one, and you experience it in different ways. No, like the first thing that I get is the sweetness. Like I noticed, even though the alcohol is super intense and very hot, and it comes down warm, you notice that it's very sweet. Like the first 1-2 seconds is very sweet, and then, as you said, the saltiness starts to come out a little bit later on the like after the sweetness comes in, you feel the salt, and then the smokiness is the lasting impression is sort of like you're eating bacon, like those smoked bacons or something like that at the end. Very
Agree.
interesting
So,
though.
actually, in some of my tastings, there are so many descriptions. Like people are using smoked bacon, smoked sometimes tinapa. That's what you taste. So very smoky in a sense. So definitely, I'm excited to pair it with the chocolate because it can be contrasting. So what can balance it out is the chocolate for sure. So, but at the finish of this actually quite sweet. So what the best thing to describe this with is sweet smoke. So it's still sweet, a little bit intense.
Katrina just made a comment about, I was just going to say the same thing. It tastes like a bonfire. And actually, it's the first one that we've tasted that you feel on your throat, right?
Yeah.
Agree. Because it's actually cask strength, ladies and gentlemen. So 56.5 compared to the 43.4%. So it's quite intense. Now, I think it will be the best time to have pairing with Lagavulin 12, fresh release with Tupi. So definitely Rob will explain, but I'm going to try because
okay.
this will balance out
this is
the
Tupi,
flavor. Yeah.
Purple one.
Rob, you want to say something about chocolate?
Yeah, so the tupi is from Cotabato, South Cotabato. It's an organic single estate farm. And yeah, again, it's an organic farm, but it's grown with a combination of fruits, so this diversity of this organic farm is pretty interesting, and you get a lot of these sort of like although it's an 80%, which is very surprising. You'd normally think that 80% is too dark for most people, but it seems to be sort of light. I mean, it's dark and intense if you taste it now, and you have very subtle notes of like I taste a bit of flowers in there, and yeah, it does have that hints of citrus, so some lemon, and I think that would go very well with this Lagavulin. No?
Actually, Rob, I was trying it now, and I was really surprised with the result. So definitely there will be contrasting flavors, but at the end of the day, it balances it up. It balances out, and burst of flavors from the whiskey, burst of flavors from the chocolate. So it's a really good pair. So you can actually share your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to check it out also with other chocolates, you may do so. But that's our fourth whiskey and chocolate. So maybe someone would like to share their thoughts about the pair or about the whiskey or about the chocolate.
I mean, I'm like my favorite is the Lagavulin 16. So the 12, it really hits you. It's like once you drink it, it's like I'm chewing cigarettes or tobacco. It's pretty strong, but I like it. But I think I need to pair it with chocolate or maybe like a drop of water.
Yeah. Definitely, absolutely. Then so great to hear that you like the classic one. So
It's my favorite.
The classic Lag of Woolen is the 16. This one is actually younger, so it tends to be more intense because so it was younger in aging. Plus, it's natural cask strength. So I agree. You can actually add a little bit of water and have it with the toupe chocolate, and it's just amazing pairing. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, Len.
Rob, the lilac flowers are found here?
No, there's none. There's none. Actually, that's also one of the things. If you notice, most of the flavor notes, and that's also something that we've been trying to push in the industry, even with both coffee and cacao. When people do these flavor notes and profiling, a lot of the profiling and flavor notes are actually taken from very Western experiences of what you associate, and so honestly, you don't really find a lot of flavor note profiles that are in packaging that says durian or let's say jackfruit. So it's coming from a very Western experience of what people, when you taste something, although it's made here, you try your mind tries to it with profiles that are, let's say, the usual profile that you would come across, and you're trying to look for that. Your mind tries to connect with something where you've smelled something, experienced something, and it's mostly in places where you've also had these experiences during wine tasting, or you've in your travels to Europe or US, or flowers that you bring in. But yeah, going to what you're saying, it's very interesting now that a lot of now we're trying to add and push for a lot of Asian fruit profiles, because and for it to be a reverse, right? So in the world of wine, coffee, cacao, there's this push to include more Asian flavors as people try to associate what they've experienced or what they've tasted in Asia, right? But yeah, for me, it's more like flowers. It's softer. It's different from, let's say, the other one where you have very strong raisin. Again, raisin is it's a very Western experience, right? It's not like, I like that somebody commented a while ago, tinapa, right? That's very interesting because it's a very Filipino experience. And again, there's so many things in the Philippines that you could put down there in your flavor notes. Like you could say it tastes like it pinipig or something like that, right? So those are flavor profiles that hopefully in the next few years we could start including that in your description, and hopefully globally anyone that tastes it would be able to identify with that, right? So
no, in fact, in your little kits today, you would have gotten a little voucher from Tigre y Oliva where you can get 10% off on their products if you go to Shopify.com, their site within Shopify. And I have to say that they also have other products with unusual combinations that you'd never think would work, right? With some Filipino flavors. If you've never had patis in chocolate, you should try that particular, what's it called again? Those bars, right?
oh yeah, the peely butter bar. Yeah, so
They
those
are
the
so good, unexpectedly good. Because you think that the
Thank you.
combination won't work, but it does.
Yeah, it's got crazy combinations. We use peely butter, so it's like your peanut. It's instead of peanut butter, it's peely, which is like a very fatty nut. It's one. In fact, it's the fattiest nut I think globally. So it would be likened to a pine nut. So you could use peely nut if you make pesto. You could use it as an alternative to pesto. So it's a very fatty, highly oily nut. Very. But then we paired it with a chocolate ganache as a filling, and instead of salted caramel we did like a patis caramel, which is like a fermented fish caramel. Yeah,
Which works actually. You don't even taste the patis, but the caramel aspect of it works so well with the chocolate, with the ganache and the pili.
Jordi has done that, Navarra.
yes, exactly.
Jordi's done that.
Yeah. In fact Jordi is one of our
Hi.
yeah, we Toyo. So I wasn't able to
Yes.
discuss it earlier in the slide, but we worked with Chef Jordi, Chef Chele, and Margarita Forest. They are three of the chefs that we've been working with in the past like 2-3 years in trying to develop inspiration and recipes. Yeah.
But the patis chocolate isn't here in what we got.
No. It's
No, because
it's
they
actually
don't come in a bar. They come in like little boxes. Yeah, they're like lemon squares, diba? I mean, the concept behind it, they're like lemon squares, but obviously pili chocolate patis.
It's very good. I had it in Toyo, but not Tigre. But yeah.
Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you guys. So actually I also had that one, the patis, salted caramel patis in Toyo. It was really great.
Mm.
Very nice. Hi Mrs. Hello.
Hi. Sorry to be late.
It's okay. Good to see you again. So I think we're jumping on to the next whiskey, which is probably my favorite whiskey. So we are jumping on to Talisker 15. So Before we go on to Talisker, I forgot there's a question in the chat box about Lagavulin 12 regular classic and the Lagavulin specialty. So yes, we do have the Lagavulin 12 part of the classic range, but the Lagavulin 12 special release is actually the cask strength, and it's just limited number and quantity in terms of bottles. So the Lagavulin 12 is not yet actually available in the country, but definitely the ABV of that one is same as the classic ones, tend to be in the lower ABV. But this one in particular, Lagavulin 12, is higher in ABV, 56.5%. So quite intense. Right. So jumping on to our last but not the least pair, Talisker 15. I'm really excited because this is my favorite single malt. So Talisker is part of Highlands, but technically it's part of the island of Skye in the northwest of Scotland. The reason why I really like this is because of the characteristics of the distillery and the whiskey itself. So I think Sir Vivek, we were talking about peppery notes earlier. So this one is actually more of the pepper and spice flavor profile. Earlier, we've tasted Lagavulin, which is highly peated. Talisker is medium peated. So the barleys that we use in Talisker are half peated and half unpeated. So there's a balance of the smokiness is actually balanced out. But this one in particular is quite intense because it's 57.3%. And again, it's aged in hogshead or American barrels for 15 years. And definitely there's a burst of flavors and pepper notes in this whiskey. So Talisker has a saying of it's made by the sea because the distillery is directly beside the sea. It's very coastal, so there will be some notes of coastal notes coming through, some saltiness in there, a little bit of maritime spice that you're going to check in this particular whiskey. So on the nose, it's quite dry, a little bit of spice, a little bit of smoke, but definitely some pepper notes coming through as well. Very spicy. Yeah, the spiciness is
hard to
covered.
open.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Oh.
All right. So it's spice covering the smoke, so very intense, but that's actually the characteristics of the distillery itself. So again, it's 57.3%. It's quite intense. Let's have a taste. So beautiful liquid, a little bit of sort of, like I said, saltiness in it because of the coastal notes. Earlier, Lagavulin, when you try to sip on it, the smokiness just comes through. Talisker in the end, you just need to have it quite some time before the smokiness comes out. So definitely there's a little bit of spice at first, dry, and then smoke. Biglang boom, smoke. Really great whiskey. So on the finish, it's quite spicy, and it's just a very how to say delicious single malt. So I really like this. That's why it's in the end as well because it's quite intense, 57.3. You can add a little bit of water if you want to, and it's just a beautiful distillery. So my last training when I was in Scotland was in this distillery. That's why it's very special to me, and it's one of my favorite whiskey. Even though I wasn't working with Diageo yet, when I was still working at the Long Bar, this is actually my favorite single malt. Now it's a great pair with the Santa Maria chocolate from Tigre y Oliva. Definitely the notes of the whiskey will definitely go well with the chocolate. So Sir Rob?
Definitely, I feel that, and ironically, Ryan, this is also a coastal town, this Santa Maria. So it's at the actually very tip of Davao, and close to the tip of Mindanao. So it's a coastal town, and you'd find the cacao trees planted with a lot of chili peppers, like chilies, like sili. So they're planted with them, right? So I found that, and of course, with also it has a sort of like a bit of fruitiness. It's fruitier than our other origins, but then yeah, it also has that sort of like spicier kick to it. Versus if you notice, the Talandang was a little bit cooling in the mouth. The Santa Maria would have more of a subtle. It's sharper. The experience is as if you would feel the chocolate or the notes closer to the tip of your tongue rather to the center, no?
Absolutely. Agree. Sarap. Really good combination as well. Very interesting flavors from the whiskey and of course from the chocolates. And when combined, it's just very nice whiskey and chocolate. So from the audience, would like to share something about the last whiskey and the last chocolate if you want to share.
I got your text early at
I
6.
think I want to share about the way you've I don't know, you described the experience, and you know, it's heightened our experience. I think. Thank you, Ryan and Rob. I think you've
Thank you.
done a great job by giving us all this. I don't know.
The information's good.
Yeah.
I think it's fun because it makes the Zoom really interesting. The chocolate, I mean, it gives me like, you know, we do a lot of Zoom meetings and calls and extra even workouts, and you really have to be innovative. And this is a nice way, and we're enjoying it. So
Thank you.
congrats, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining.
Well, it's not over yet.
Okay, yeah, of course. With all this whiskey, you might as well, you know, experience it with everything. But yeah,
Thank you.
Well done.
Well,
thank you guys.
Good
Thank you
job,
very much.
Bambina.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks for
idea.
joining us. It's funny because this Talisker, the Lagavulin, I could feel it in my throat. The Talisker went up to my nose.
57.3 Bambina.
That's why. Okay. That's the highest.
Yeah.
Is
So
it the
far,
highest?
that's why it's at the end.
Yeah.
How about anyone? Would like anyone to share about the
Ryan,
whiskey and the
any more higher, and this would be COVID proof already.
How I wish. How I wish. Yeah. But basically, ladies and gentlemen, that's our 5 whiskeys and 5 chocolates. I think it's a great opportunity for us to share our thoughts and talk about the experience. Or if you have any questions for us.
Yeah, I think my final take on this is that, you know, we are really high on the whiskey. Thank you very much. And since there are 5 of them, let me finish by giving you all a high five.
Cheers, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
I think for now we can open the
High
floor
five to all.
for questions. If you have any questions or
You can just type that.
I never realized that whiskey would go well with chocolate.
Right?
I never realized. I was thinking cigarettes, cigar, but yeah,
Yeah, it works. No?
good pairing.
Smoked almonds.
Yeah, I guess because the chocolate has also kind of what a deep, earthy
exactly.
Yeah.
kind of taste.
Oh, yeah. Like wine, I guess, right? Because it goes well with wine.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad, Bambina. Thank you for reminding me. But I did just get out of a Zoom.
I know. In fact, I told her she was stuck in a Zoom meeting, and I said, "You really need a drink now. Come and join us." No,
I'm so
thank you
glad.
everyone for joining us. And we're gonna have more TLAC flights in Manila House. So the next time you come around, you can order from us. And Tigre y Oliva we're working on it, you know, because it also has to be kept at a certain temperature. So, you know, we'd love to have it in Manila House. We're working on it. For the moment, you can get it on Shopify.com on the Tigre y Oliva site. And don't forget, you've got 10% discount when you place an
Oh.
order.
But this is great, Bambina. Like I'd happy to do this more frequently. Like even my own personal experience of chocolate and whiskey pairing. Normally, you'd have whiskey as I mean, of course, not to be. I don't mean to be gender, but it's more of you'd have more males enjoying whiskey. But when I started doing this whiskey and chocolate pairing, it sort of, you know, made people appreciate it, and it became more balanced gender wise, right? And one of the interesting things also is, you know, when I drink whiskey, sometimes you want to eat something a little bit to line your stomach, and you end up eating all these fatty foods. But with chocolate, you only need one small piece, right? And it lines your stomach pretty well because it's high in cocoa butter, so it's a fatty product in itself, but not fat that's that's bad for you. It's essentially just the butter the natural butters that you have in the. And when we did the first Whiskey Live event in Shangri-La, it was very interesting because before we did this, it was mostly women that appreciated, or that we found were buying their chocolate, that would be patronizing our chocolate. But then with the whiskey thing, it just adds an entirely new dimension of experience, and which is fun for both genders, right? So I appreciate it with my wife, and it's a good experience. It's a good fun thing to do with your friends, whether you're together on a dinner or. And I think what's great, if you can do wine and whiskey and chocolate, that combination, wine, cheese, chocolate, and those are really good things.
No, it's
know
been
what they
a
say about
revelation
chocolate.
of flavors, right? It's been such a revelation for both the whiskey and the chocolate.
Well, I'm happy to do this with Diageo. It's very, very thankful that you guys asked us to join and participate and partner up with you guys.
Yeah, and then hopefully, if you like the Manila House Samba, chocolate Samba, we're hoping to make it a regular in the menu soon.
Great.
So if you seal your seal of approval, we'll put it in the menu.
It's really yummy.
Ria wants a whole cake.
Good, no?
It's really good. I'm actually surprised there are only 20 people 20 participants here. I mean, maybe they didn't know. Like, I signed up because it was whiskey, but the lineup and the chocolates, they exceeded my expectations. So yeah, I mean, I think you should do this again and maybe advertise it more, because I think people are missing out.
So, well, we actually couldn't have a very big group to start with. That's why we have to do it in series, maybe, because there are also logistical issues and
That's true.
issues. Yeah. So
make sure you invite us again.
Sign up.
Read your emails.
Yeah, I do.
I
That's
know.
how we got in.
I know.
This wasn't on
Ryan
the
and
email,
Rob.
but on the newsletter, right?
This on the newsletter and on WhatsApp. Do you get the WhatsApp, Sass?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's on the WhatsApp also.
Where can we find the Mortlach? I don't think I see it in a lot of groceries or stores.
Ryan, where's Mortlach, or Matthias, where's Mortlach available?
Actually, Mortlach will be available in Manila House. So they actually have a tasting flight soon at the Avenue Bar. So definitely you can have Mortlach there. And when we talk about Mortlach bottles, it's quite new in the market. So like what Matt was telling earlier, you guys are the first few people to taste Mortlach. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Basically,
I missed that.
Matt, would you like to add something, Matt?
no, just to address your question. So as I maybe Miss Sess, you weren't here earlier, right? But just to address, so the products that you tasted tonight are not readily available. So there are two types. You have the Mortlach, and then you have the special releases. So as Ryan said, both are hard to come by. So we decided to make it available on both ends. Manila House was willing to welcome it, and we decided to offer it to Manila House. So you cannot find any other establishment right now in the Philippines that offers these liquids except Manila House.
Wow.
There are a few other.
Bambina, ang
that's correct,
swerte mo
that's
naman.
correct.
Manila House lang.
Manila House lang when it comes to establishments, that's right. There are a few other limited channels when it comes to Mortlach at this point, since as Ryan said, you are one of the first. I hope you feel privileged to have tried it. So at this point, yes, quite difficult to come by. The special releases, which were the ones, Bambina, where you were complaining it's a bit strong because it's natural cask strength. These are part of the special.
It wasn't a complaint. It was only a comment.
Not complaining, but I mean, it's really it's natural cask. So of course the alcohol percentage is quite high. But those are part of the special releases. So the special releases, on the other hand, you can basically find nowhere, right? So, but except again, as of now, which is true in Manila House. right? It's usually coursed through our private sales channel because of the limited allocation worldwide. Besides that, it's really just available in Manila House. So Manila House is the place to go when you're looking for these products. There are a few different ways, but not very easy to access at this point.
And Sess, we're your neighbors, so you just have to walk across the street.
I know.
No excuse.
Hey, you're getting fully booked nowadays, huh?
No, it's been good. It's been good.
I
In fact,
always get the notice na, sorry, parang, diba?
yeah, because we have to follow the LGU
No, but that's good.
regulations. Yeah.
Although that's probably just a few tables, right?
Well, we're allowed 50%, are we? Or
50%.
50 at the moment. Yeah.
50% for the alfresco, and then 10% for indoor areas.
So see you all at Manila House. You know, we've expanded our alfresco areas actually, and we have all the new cabanas now in the side, in the garden, the old garden, the deck, and the terrace side. So there's enough space now, I think, for everyone.
Bambina is my
Hi,
daughter.
Tina.
She's 17. Hi, she's 17. Is she allowed in Manila House?
Yeah, she can't drink alcohol lang. Huh?
Yeah. Okay. She can
Just
drink it,
call
but
me.
she
Just
can go
call
17.
me, okay?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Where's Joel? Hi, Joel. Are you there?
He's in the other room.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He's tipsy now from all the.
Yeah, I know. Len, you're asking 50 people for outdoors. Yes, 50% and 10% indoors. At the moment, we only have the bar open. But now we've weatherproofed the outdoor areas as well. So even when it's too hot, there's shade and there's a breeze. And then when it rains, it's also covered. Sorry, Len, you were saying?
No, I haven't seen the cabanas yet, Bambina.
Yeah, no, and they're bigger now. You know, we had temporary cabanas, and now
they're
we've got
nice.
proper ones. They're nice. Yeah, they're really nice.
I even had lunch. I mean, can you just imagine? Like,
Did you try the Thai food?
I haven't.
No, can you please try? And
Yeah.
Rob and Ryan, can you work? Well, let's work with the Thai chef. Baka we
It's
can
really
do-
good. Very
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
I hope you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
continue doing the special menus. Even the lumpia menu, I really enjoy
Lumpia
it.
is so good. The only thing is we tried to see if we could do lumpia takeaway. It doesn't work so well.
Lumpia is bad for
Soggy,
takeaway.
it's soggy when it gets to you. But otherwise, yeah, if you eat it there, it's so good. The crab, did you try the crab? Even the ubod and the crab. There was
Haven't.
a crab. Yeah. That was
Yan
so
ang whiskey on summer, in summer, parang it's kind of a, not a good thing.
whiskey in the summer.
Eh, di ba?
Night, Mrs. At night. That would be great. At night.
Oh, at night. Naka-aircon.
Yeah, at night. Yeah.
Yeah, but this was on a whim that and I just registered, and I'm so glad I did. I discovered this beautiful chocolate. Amazing that you can trace the parang the location of where the cacao is grown. It's really
No, but
great.
what was interesting, Sass, because you missed it in the beginning when Rob was explaining the chocolate, cacao actually grows in the equatorial belt. That's why we have it, and certain countries in Africa, and certain countries in Mexico, right? And all
Yeah,
because
we
we're
got it
all
from Mexico.
equatorial. Yeah. We would have gotten it from Mexico, right, Rob?
Yeah.
From the golden trade.
Yeah, yeah. From the
Indigenous people. This was before the Spanish.
But so
Yeah,
did we
so-
grow the cacao from
Mhm.
them? Did we actually get the beans from them?
We did. There are several traces of that, and in fact, I was doing some research before. The more common knowledge is that what's known is that cacao. The Philippines is the first country in all of Asia to get cacao in Asia because of the galleon trades.
Yeah.
But what they aren't sure is if it was coming from Mexico. But then when I was talking to Chele, he was trying to look at the archives in another South or South. It's either a South American country. I forget which country that was. And he was saying that there may have been even earlier records, right? So
Really?
what we know in our history, yeah. So we were chatting about it. So he was trying to look at the archives. So I think it was Colombia or something. One of these countries. So we're still trying to do research on that. By you remember, it's like that book, right? Like I don't know if you guys read it. Was like 1421, and how they were able to find and prove that the Chinese circumnavigated the world before the West. But the way they were able to do it was because all the Chinese records were lost. But they just went to every country and tried to look at their archives and just tied everything together. So I think with what Chele was doing, he was trying to look at the archives and look in the archives in, I think it was Colombia or something like that, and trace their archives if there were, trade that was being done through with the Philippines at that time. But definitely 300, 400 years ago, we were the first country that got cacao in Asia. It just so happened that the Philippines was never, and it was probably good for us. It was never developed as a commodity country. So the countries that are leading producers of cacao were actually colonies of France, which is like the Ivory Coast. Because normally you would have producing countries that are very near where the biggest consumers are. So the Ivory Coast, which is a French colony, supplied most of Europe, while the Latin American countries supplied most of US, which are the biggest consumers. But because chocolate wasn't really consumed much in Asia, the Philippines and the Pacific were never grew to be these colonized cacao countries. So it was never commodified. But if you trace their history, both of them all of these equatorial countries have a history of cacao, but not chocolate. So they were, if you look at their history, it's in drinking cacao.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just have that drink.
Tablea, yeah. So in
Tablea.
the Philippines, it's tablea. In Samoa, you would have cacao Samoa, which is exactly like tablea. In Mexico, you would have it as mole in other stuff because there were no refrigerators during those times. So all the equatorial countries have a history of cacao, but in liquid form. Whereas when they brought it to the Western countries or the colonial powers, it would harden up. It would become cold during the winter. So it became the tangent of chocolate development and evolution was in the colder countries because it became hard. Whereas in the countries where they were in production, it was always drunk as a fresh beverage. Yeah. So yeah. So now that was. So now you have the meeting of both cultures where you have, and now in the West, they're now trying to appreciate cacao or chocolate in its fresher form. So you have these drinking cacao, but now there are also countries that are experimenting or trying to market cacao juice, which is totally different. That doesn't taste anything like chocolate. It tastes more like a tropical fruit, and it comes from the juice that comes from the cacao pod, and it's more like, it almost tastes like a mangosteen and as an elixir. So it's now being marketed in the US. But if you look at the Philippines 100 years back, 150 years back, you'd have accounts of these Spanish guys drinking the cacao juice as a fermented beverage. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in the industry now. Yeah. Aside from chocolate. Yeah.
But does it follow that where there's cacao, there's also coffee beans?
No, not necessarily actually. So coffee, you would have it's not necessarily like an equatorial country. You'd have it in cold countries as well, but it's mostly highland areas for the Arabica. Whereas cacao, it's really predominantly hot tropical areas.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially developing countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hi, Joel. Nice to
Hi.
see you.
Hey, Mina. Thanks for this great event. Can I ask a question to Rob?
Yeah, sure.
I met your partner or whatever, the one who's doing this chocolate, right? I met him in BGC because he was there in one of the pop-ups. I was there with my daughter. And he explained the whole story. Very interesting, no? So I don't know if you answered this a while ago, so I had to step out a bit. So how is your domestic market in terms of appreciation of Filipinos of a high-end, quote-unquote, local chocolate?
Well, honestly, it's actually been getting better and better, right? Like, honestly, with the advent of Malagos chocolate, Oro, Theo and Philo, all of these great, Filipino chocolate companies that are bringing the Philippine chocolate brand in itself as a country to the world. It's come in a proper time, because maybe if this was 20 years ago, sadly the Philippines would still have that colonial mentality, right? Wherein everything that was good had to be imported in, right? Whereas now it's not only in the Philippines, but it's becoming like a global awareness that local could be good, right? So you have chefs promoting local and fresh ingredients, something that's harvested fresh from a partner supplier, farmer, fermented and brought in fresh. And as long as is good, the market has become more sophisticated and less influenced by just people telling them what's good and what's not, right? And so the people now have now the ability to assess for themselves whether the product is done with very good quality standards or not. So we have to thank some of these guys that just bit the bullet and went out there, and luckily a lot of them have won awards already. We're one of the younger companies compared to the Malagos and Oros and Tio and Filo, but it comes from good ingredients, I would believe, right? So the process and the technology can be brought in. You can buy good machinery, you can get consultants, you could get people. Where it's a global city now, it's a global, the world is gone global. People from other countries move to countries of origin to produce good quality products there. But the fact is, chocolate can only grow in equatorial countries, right? It cannot grow at all in very cold climates. So you have very good brands like, let's see, Maru chocolate from Vietnam, was started by some French people, but that have made Vietnam their home. And I think similar thing is happening now in the Philippines, where the regular consumer or the consumers that would appreciate restaurants like Toyo, Gallery by Chile, and other very good local restaurants are now seeing the value of something that could be grown, locally, produced locally. And so we're very happy about it.
Thanks,
It's
Rob.
still small. It's still small, but it's still growing.
But I understand the DA distributed parang GMO. I'm not sure if it's GMO or fast-growing cacao plants to farmers. That was
They do. Well, it's not GMO. The cacao industry, unlike corn, soy, isn't that sophisticated yet. That they have GMO specific to that. But it's most of these
endemic.
varietals. Sorry.
Maybe not endemic to the Philippines, or
no, not really. But what's happening now is it's all global. Says a lot of the varietals now that are being propagated actually aren't new. What the DA is promoting now are actually varietals that have been around since the 80s or 90s. It's just that it's just that the cacao industry had taken a dip in the 90s for a while because of global commodity market crash for the cocoa industry itself. But there was a revival sometime in the mid 2000s, spearheaded by Miss Pentespina of Malagos Chocolate, and these varietals are promoted again. But essentially, they've been around here for the past 30-40 years. Yeah.
Okay. So there's nothing wrong with what they're doing.
No, I don't think so. But what's wrong though, I think, is the loss of these very old varietals that let's say that have been 300-year-old varietals that have been here, the first ones that were brought during the Spanish times, and a lot of these are disappearing, specifically because they don't have the same productivity. They don't have the same yield output. And so if once the market becomes commodified, or becomes a commodity market where you mix so much ingredients that you don't actually taste the chocolate, then it's all a matter of volume. It's not a matter of taste anymore.
I guess there's
so a lot
growing, or parang the yield is smaller.
Yeah, it's not as tasty, but the yield is double, triple, quadruple. So people tend to forego of these older varietals that have a stronger, better flavor. So events like these, companies like these that promote taste over quantity, is actually what would keep these varietals alive. Yeah.
I have a curious question to Rian. Thanks, Raba, for your curious lang. Did your sales go up with the pandemic? Are more people
Honestly,
drinking at home? I mean, just wondering. It's a curious question.
it's actually, as we all know, everyone is being
I'll
affected
make
by
this now off the
pandemic.
record.
And actually, this in particular is quite challenging for both us and our customers and our consumers. So I'm not quite sure with the sales numbers because I'm not really part of the sales team. So, but definitely what we are trying to do is to support as much as we can to customers and to consumers. And a good thing to have this collaboration with Manila House as well. So I'm not quite sure, but definitely with the liquor bans that happened for a couple of weeks, definitely we were affected by that one. But at the end of the day, what we are prioritizing is the safety and of everyone. In fact, in Diageo, we are actually working from home for more than a year already. I haven't seen the office in BGC since March 14 of last year. So yeah, it's quite difficult, but happy to be surviving. But definitely, all of us will bounce back together soon, and we will do this physically.
One thing I'd also add, right? So I mean, many people are suffering. Most of the people, including, everyone. I think in some aspect, most of the companies, individuals. But what I say when it comes to like Diageo or any other of our competitors, anything related when it comes to alcoholic beverages or beverages in general, we are still okay, right? So in that sense, I don't want to talk about numbers in specific as well, but people. One of the few things which I mentioned earlier when I was talking is that people are still having the chance to drink, even though they cannot really move around. Of course, other businesses are affected. Our business is affected as well, but people drink for happiness, sorrow, whatever it is. It's still available. Liquor ban was a problem, but we're still happy that we are not as affected as maybe perhaps other industries, but I think it's safe to say that most industries are affected, but still happy and blessed for where we are. And to share this, guys, this event, for example, with you, where we can still, enjoy an evening like this, where you can drink on your own, even sometimes, even when you're confined to your own home, your house or your condominium. So yeah,